Hello, this is a lecture on the sociological approaches to studying media. What is sociology? Sociology is the study of social life and its various ramifications in human society. Now, media today can be understood as the key to the social because more than having face-to-face interactions with each other, we spend most of our time looking at different forms of media, say the television or the laptop or your phones. And that is what makes media such an important aspect of study for sociologists, because media has a huge impact on society. In 2001, September 11th, 3 planes were hijacked, and they were used to attack different sites in Washington and New York. The timing was such that when the first plane hit the Twin Towers, the media was informed and the press rushed to the site. And when the second plane hit the towers, almost a global population of 2 billion people watched it happen in real time. Now let us go back to another event which was catastrophic in 1865, when the actor John Wilkes Booth assassinated the then US President Abraham Lincoln. It took 12 days for this news to reach London. From USA, a ship started. This ship then reached Ireland. From Cork, it was telegrammed. So it took 12 days for this huge world news to reach London, whereas in real time, these people watched the event of 9/11, which forms such an important historical event in our societies till date. This is what the media theorist Marshall McLuhan calls the global village. Communication, the transfer of information from one individual or group to another, whether in speech or through the mass media, is crucial to any kind of society. So when Marshall McLuhan says that today communication has become so easy that with a single click of a button, you can actually send a message across the world instantaneously. Therefore, the world has today shrunk into what we can call a global village. We can imagine how even a few years back, people would have to wait for the morning newspaper to get their daily news or entertainment. But today, they have it in the palm of their hands. This interconnected world in which people experience the same event from many different places has made globalization too a success story. With the success of the OTT platforms, which we call the over-the-top platforms, people can now watch a film from any part of the world in any language they wish to. It is a means of providing television and film content over the internet at the request and to suit the requirements of the individual consumer. The term itself, as I said, stands for over the top, which implies that a content provider is going over the top of existing internet services to provide you with that entertainment. A good example will be the popularity of South Korean films and dramas globally today. They are not watched in the English language or any other regional language. They are usually watched in the South Korean language with subtitles over the OTT platform. What are the functions of mass media? The first of them being information. We have a need for information to satisfy curiosity, to reduce uncertainty, to better understand how we fit into the world. And the amount of information that is available in the society today is overwhelming compared to, say, 40 years ago. Several years back, there were only a few newspapers and a few TV channels to give us certain kinds of information. You may or may not remember a time when the news used to be broadcast only thrice a day or twice a day. But today, the media saturation has led to an increased competition to provide information, which creates the potential for news media outlets, for example, to report information prematurely, inaccurately, or with a certain kind of bias. But the existence of media that makes the dissemination of this kind of information possible is probably more important than its misuse. The second function that we can talk about is the interpretation function. Media outlets interpret messages in more or less explicit and ethical ways. Newspaper editorials have long been explicit interpretations of current events. And now you can also hear on the television, there are political personalities who are giving their opinions on current issues, etc. All of this helps us in interpreting the world around us. The third function is the instructive function. Now, some media outlets exist to cultivate knowledge. They teach instead of just relaying information, right? There are major news channels like the CNN, the BBC, or let's talk about the Discovery Channel, which are created to produce a kind of knowledge that is going to be instructive in nature. The fourth one can be a bonding function, and this is important. Media outlets can bring people closer together, which serves a bonding function. For example, people who share values and interests can gather on online forums, and masses of people can be brought together while watching a coverage of any kind of event, be it a tragic event or a happy event. The bonding function by the media is clear in the use of different kinds of social networking sites that all of you might be using. The fifth function is a diversion function. We all use the media to escape our day-to-day mundane life activities. When we are being distracted, amused, or relaxed, the media is performing the diversion function. This is closely related to one of the most important functions of the media, which is providing entertainment. The media acts as a gatekeeper, and that is the sixth function. It functions as an agency of social control. It is most apparent in contemporary times with the popular usages of the mobile phone. If you ever have a fight on the street with someone, or you see someone who does not follow a traffic signal, people usually make a video from their mobile phones of it. And it forms a sort of social control, or it gives certain power to the media outlets to ensure that the individual follows an orderly manner and does not go into any kind of anarchic situation, because proof is easily available today. The seventh function is one of the most important functions, which is socialization. The mass media is an important agent of socialization at all stages of human life. It is an implicit learning and cultivation process that teaches us how to behave in a society and what is the kind of role that is expected from us as social individuals. Therefore, this socialization, as I mentioned, is not just of the children who are, of course, watching the media and having an instructive function, but also for adults. It also helps us to understand how to behave with other people. Mass media is a strong medium of social development, and it is a facilitator for promoting cultural development. What are the advantages of mass media? First of all, it gives voice to the voiceless. It plays an essential role in shining the spotlight on the masses, as the general public can express their views and opinions freely through the mass media. This way, it becomes the voice of the voiceless. And it gives the right platform for the people to use their right to express themselves freely. Secondly, it aids in effective and wider communication. It is through different types of mass media, from social media, digital platforms, that the world has transformed into a global village that we talked about, right? So communication is possible today. If you have a friend living at any part of the world, you will be able to interact with that friend in real time immediately. So it gives effective communication. Thirdly, there is a diffusion of diverse cultures, which you can understand with the example of the South Korean television shows that I mentioned earlier. So it plays a colossal part in spreading arts and cultures to every nook and corner of the world. Especially with the help of the internet, anyone can learn a new language, know about a different culture, or even travel the whole world without really leaving one's couch. It is also, mass media is an encyclopedia of information. It is truly a massive source of open information and open learning. From search engine platforms to social media platforms, learning websites and learning outcomes are huge from the media. And there have been certain empirical studies conducted that show that children today learn much more from mass media than in schools or other educational institutions. Now let's try a quiz. What is a global village, and how does media create this? You know the answer to this, but it will be interesting if you could give an example from around you and see how your life is also interconnected in this global village. What is mass media? Why is it called mass media? Because it can reach the masses and the audiences in no time. And media usually does not distinguish between the masses. It reaches everyone from all genders, from all communities, and now from all countries too. Now, but the mass media was not always so. It has had a long trajectory of development. So let's look at the journey of mass media. There are certain different forms of media that this journey has taken. So we can divide the forms of media into traditional forms and new forms. Johannes Gutenberg's invention of the printing press in mid-15th century in Britain can be considered as the marker of the beginning of what we can call mass media, because for the first time it made high-speed reproduction of the printed word possible. From the simple printing press, mass media has embarked on a long journey which is still ongoing. Although technological advances played a crucial role in the development of mass media, the social, cultural, political, and economic environment also played a huge role in the way it developed. The mass media could only develop in societies with a relatively free press and an educated and wealthy enough population that could take advantage of it. Let us start by examining the traditional forms that sort of laid the pathway for the new forms of media to emerge. The first form of mass media was the press. Now, the press emerged in Britain during the 19th century, which is the commercial press, emerged in the 19th century at a time of great political and social unrest. The government would keep a very close watch on what was being published in the press, and they also levied something called a stamp tax. So newspapers were very expensive, and only the wealthy could afford newspapers. Consequence of the invention of the printing press and the popularization of commercial press was that certain pamphlets were published against the stamp tax, and the stamp tax had to be finally repealed. But cheap newspapers did not emerge until, say, the 1960s in the United States. The newspaper is a fundamentally important development in the history of modern media. It packages many different types of information in a limited and easily reproducible format. It contained in a single package information on current affairs, entertainment, consumer goods. The reduction in costs in the United States was adopted by the entire world, which made the newspaper one of the cheapest mediums to receive all kinds of information, from national news to international news to news about job vacancies, to that of entertainment. The invention of cheap newsprint was the key to the mass diffusion of newspapers from the late 19th century onwards. But ownership of the leading daily newspapers in almost all countries is concentrated in the hands of what are called the press barons. The critics argue that the press barons use these national newspapers to promote their own political causes and their own ideologies. Newspapers have gradually lost popularity over the years, but if you look at the online internet news platforms, you would often find that they still use the format of newspapers, which sort of reiterates the importance of newspapers in social life. The second traditional form of media is the film. The first film to be shown to paying customers was in 1895 in Paris, France, where the Lumiere brothers' film, Arrival of the Train in La Ciotat station, pardon my French, caused viewers to flee from their seats when they saw an oncoming steam engine on the screen. Film and cinema took much lesser time than the press to develop. Cinema tickets could be afforded by all classes, and the decline in working hours and rise in unemployment in the 1920s meant that cinema goers soon found a mass audience. As the film industry became more commercialized, something which we can call a star system emerged, with studios encouraging interest in the personal lives of famous actors, whose appearance in a film would ensure that the film would be a hit. Today, the film industry is not only an important economic agent, but also a very influential social and cultural power. In India, Raja Harishchandra, a silent film which was directed and produced by Dadasaheb Phalke, is often considered the first full-length Indian feature film, which brought in a cultural revolution in India. Today, the Mumbai-based Bollywood industry is popular worldwide, and it helps in projecting certain social and cultural opinions, especially pertaining to India, globally. The third kind of a traditional form of media, where we have clubbed two together, are the radio and television. Audiences interact differently with radio and television from how they do with cinema, because radio and television enters the household in such a way that cinema cannot. And neither do these media demand attention that films do. So people usually listen to radio as a morning ritual while doing their tasks. The television is usually on at someone's home, whether they are looking at it or not. They also have an immediacy about them, which film does not. They can report events from anywhere in the world to a mass audience as they happen. The most popular broadcasting agency was the British Broadcasting Agency, or the BBC, in the UK, which was a public organization that was funded by license fees that was charged to every household that owned a television set. For some years, the BBC was the only organization that was permitted to broadcast either radio or television in the UK. This policy was relaxed with the introduction of commercial television in the 1950s. Commercial television was dependent on advertising for its revenue rather than the license fee. And in India, the government used to use these kinds of advertisements, etc., to communicate with its large population. And even to this day, television remains an important source of entertainment and information for the entire population of the country. But sociologists have had a rather critical approach to television viewership. So how have they seen television and social life? Several media theorists have talked about how television viewing erodes social capital. We will discuss specifically two authors who are Robert Putnam and Neil Postman. And according to Postman, television presents serious issues as entertainment because it is a medium that is incapable of sustaining any kind of serious content. Whereas the printed word creates a rational population which is able to think for itself. The television viewers are only an entertained population. And therefore, in a society which is dominated by television news, education, politics are all reduced to entertainment. So we are doing nothing more than amusing ourselves to death, according to Postman. Putnam is a little more optimistic. He refers to social capital as, useful social networks, a sense of mutual obligation, trustworthiness, understanding of the norms that govern effective behavior, and in general, other social resources that enable people to act effectively. Putnam argues that the link between mass television viewing and the erosion of social capital is not merely circumstantial. It takes a lot of other things into account, such as education, age, gender. TV viewing is strongly and negatively related to social trust and group membership. And when these same criteria are used, it has been seen that the correlation of newspaper reading to social trust and group membership is much more positive. Marshall McLuhan has a very similar idea. He talked about the hypodermic needle theory or the magic bullet theory to explain how the television had the capability to inject dominant ideologies into the viewers' minds immediately within their homes. From this, we come to the new media. The media has evolved a lot in the coming times, especially with the onset of internet. Before the internet came digital television. What is the difference between digital television and the old television? The old television was an analog television where it was an old system of broadcasting. So signals were transmitted to television sets via waves. But now with digital television, the same images are transferred to every television set in the world, if it is an international news channel, simultaneously. There are no lags. Digital television revolutionized the way in which we view television in our homes. Digital television was also set up in different parts of public spaces. So if you have ever availed any kind of metro at the metro station, you would see there is a television over there. So digital television went beyond our homes and went into the social. So we were surrounded by television sets and screens all around us. We can have another small quiz. What are the distinctions between traditional forms of media and new media? Now, although I have used a theoretical account, you can also use certain examples to understand how in new media, everything is interconnected. So when we are talking about traditional forms of media, I talk about the press, the radio, the television. But today, you have all of this in the palm of your hand. So in your mobile phone, you have your radio, your television, your OTT platform. You can call someone. You have social media available. You can listen to music. So it has become an interconnected web. Media today has contracted entirely to form this new medium. From this, we go to the thing that revolutionized media completely, which was the internet. With the coming of the internet, the social changed. So when we talk about sociological approach to media, we can understand that as the internet entered our homes and our lives, we became global individuals at one go. So the internet not only affects how we view media, but the internet also affects how we view ourselves and the society around us. What the internet creates is what we call the cyberspace. This cyberspace is different from a real physical space that you live in. So let's give you the example again of your phones. When you have your phone in the palm of your hand, you are living in a cyberspace which is not real. You are probably talking to a friend who is sitting in another country or another city, or you're watching a show which has been produced and directed in another country. It is being spoken by different kinds of people. It's a language you don't even understand, and you're reading the subtitles. So you are in a certain space which is not real. Sociologists have created different kinds of theories surrounding media. There is a functionalist approach to media. There is also a conflict approach to media. The functionalist approach to media is positive. Although we have already learnt about all the functions of society, we will quickly go over what other kinds of functions the functionalists talk about regarding the media. So there is information. The media provides information. There is correlation. The media explains and helps us to understand the meanings of the information it gives us. It provides support for established social norms and has an important role of socialization of children. Thirdly, continuity. The media has a function in expressing the dominant culture, recognizing new social developments, and forging common values, because we are all watching the same thing. So we will probably have certain common values which are going to affect us. Fourth, entertainment. As we spoke, media provides entertainment. It is one of the primary duties of the media to provide entertainment in our day-to-day mundane lives. And mobilization. This is a function that sociologists are very curious about. How does mass media mobilize people? It encourages economic work, development work, religious work, and also support in times of war. So the media can campaign to mobilize society to meet all these objectives. There is also a conflict perspective. The conflict perspective of media, if we take a political economy approach, is that the world's biggest entertainment companies are owned by the world's biggest business houses. So although we claim that media is free, it actually is not. It is being ruled by what we call barons. It is being ruled by people who are dominant and hegemonic in society. They have a certain ideology that they want to disseminate to the common people. And this is what also Adorno and Horkheimer talk about in the culture industry, that although media is a cultural platform, it is actually an industry where the advertising revenues, etc. So what kind of advertisements you're watching, what kind of lifestyle is being shown to you as the perfect lifestyle, what kind of a body should you achieve, etc. Everything is being dictated by the media. What does that do? It creates a certain ideology which is dominant, hegemonic, and it helps to keep the rich rich and the poor poor. That is a conflict approach, which is a rather Marxist or a neo-Marxist approach. We will also have a short, before we wrap up and understand how the cyberspace is created and how the cyberspace is today used to disseminate these ideologies, we will go on to a discussion of a public space. Habermas considered that the public sphere emerged in the salons and the public spaces of London and Paris. But today, the public sphere is limited to what we talked about as the cyberspace. Now, this is a distortion of the public sphere, according to Habermas, because the political participation in this kind of public sphere, the kind of social interactions that are possible, the kind of cultural exchanges that are possible, are all mediated through a medium which is not face-to-face. We don't have any kind of face-to-face interaction with each other. So, according to Habermas, there has been a structural transformation of the public sphere due to the existence of this cyberspace, and he's not very optimistic about it. Similarly, if we talk about Baudrillard's concept of hyperreality, Baudrillard says the same thing. Baudrillard says that today it is a hyper-real world and everything is a simulated kind of a reality. Nothing is the same anymore. So when you are actually talking to a friend, today if you're talking to a friend, if you're messaging a friend, that may or may not be your friend. So we also have the best example of this is what we call doctored videos today. In a lot of cases of political unrest, you would find that there are doctored videos that are posted. Or say you have airbrushed and photoshopped images of celebrities today that give you an idea, give you a notion of what should be beautiful, whereas that is not reality at all. So Baudrillard talks about this kind of hyperreal world that the cyberspace creates. So this is the ideology that we were talking about. This brings us to the concept of media and ideology, how the media helps in almost constructing society today. That is why media is so important to study in sociology. As a quiz, if you can give an example to demonstrate how media promotes ideologies, it is all around you. You can take any example.